Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is a webinar held in partnership with Cvent, and we are going to be talking about the power of automation in driving mice business. My name's Eloise Hanson. I head up the hospitality division of the editorial team at Boutique Hotel News. We're a global B2B multimedia platform covering the boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. As I mentioned, this webinar is held today in partnership with Cvent, a meetings, events and hospitality tech provider. We have Graham on the call today, who's going to be sharing some further insights later. But I'm going to hand over to Graham to formally introduce Cvent and himself. So over to you, Graham.
Thank you, Eloise, and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Graham Pope. I'm the Vice President of Cvent's hospitality division internationally. So I look after our teams from UK, Europe, Middle East, India, Singapore, and Australia. So everything outside of North America, effectively. For those of you who aren't fully familiar with Cvent as a platform, our business was formed in 1999 to service the needs of event planners and marketers. And the company very quickly built up a tech stack that provided an end-to-end event management platform, from registration systems to mobile applications to data and analytics. And today we service customers in over 100 countries on the event planning side. Fast forward to 2008, and we set up the hospitality division, where we now have 312,000 hotels and meetings and events venues on our platform. And from that, we extract business from those event planners through what's called the Cvent Supplier Network to drive demand to hotels. This year, we're predicting to have sourced approximately $16 billion worth of business globally. And on top of that sort of marketing and advertising platform for hotels and venues, we provide an array of software in order for them to convert more business, manage that events business, and of course, look at the performance metrics and improve their business and functionality. So that's it from Cvent this afternoon.
Thank you, Graham. And we've popped in further details in the chat there about Cvent and Graham's contact details if you are keen to learn more. I'm going to move to Antonio next, as you are next as per the PowerPoint slide. So Antonio, over to you, please, to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Eloise. Antonio Duceschi. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Star Hotel, which is a privately owned hotel company with 30 hotels, majority in Italy, UK, France, and one in New York. And our portfolio is constituted primarily between 4- and 5-star properties, but with a scope within business travel, some large hotels operating large meeting facilities, and some boutique hotels primarily geared to the luxury market. So quite a variety of customer base.
Thank you, Antonio. And Manju, over to you, please.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Manju Goel. I'm the VP for sales, for distribution as well. Because I think nowadays you'll all agree with me, it's not just about seeing the customer, it's how we can plug into the customers. I'm also responsible for customer service and groups meeting and events at PPHE. PPHE is an owner-operator. We operate large, medium and small hotels right across Europe, mainly under the Park Plaza brand and the Art Hotel. And we plug into the Radisson Hotel Group. So you'll find us all within the Radisson umbrella.
Thank you, Manju. And the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers today have been popped into the chat. I would encourage you to connect so we can all learn more. A quick overview of how this webinar is going to run today. We're going to spend around 45 minutes in discussion, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from our audience members. So if you do have any questions for any of our speakers today, please submit this using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and I will get round to those as and when relevant. And as a reminder, this webinar is recorded and every registrant will receive a copy of that recording within 48 hours. Now, to provide some context to today's conversation, here are some headlines on your screens here. And we can see that the return of business travel has helped hotel groups such as IHG see global revenues from meetings and events sit 36% higher than pre-COVID records. And that was at the end of June 2023. And hotels across Southeast Asia and the UK have also benefited from the bounce back. And data from STR suggests that the volume of upper upscale hotels in the US development pipeline shows confidence in the future of business travel, because this is the type of hotel that is historically and traditionally linked to MICE business. And we can see also on our screens here that optimism around business travel is also reflected amongst travel managers, but rising costs do remain their top concern when planning and booking accommodation across hotels and serviced apartments. On the next slide, I'm just going to highlight the two top headlines here. A survey released by Duetto, which was in February earlier this year, revealed that hotel revenue teams were focused on optimizing group and corporate business throughout 2023, with over 60% expecting further investment in hotel tech over the next 3 years. And a Deloitte press release from last week corroborated the increasing reliance on technology, with 56% of hotel general managers expecting automation to boost the bottom line. So I hope you've all got your thinking caps on. I hope that provided some food for thought today. Let's talk about the power of automation in driving MICE business. And I'm going to kick off with a question to Graham, if I may. Graham, can you please provide some insight on how exactly the requirements of travel managers and event planners are shifting?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I think one of the things that this pandemic has done is forced us to look at automation as a solution to the challenges the industry is facing. But I think the first thing to start doing is looking at the customer at the heart of this and what are the challenges they've faced. We've seen very similar patterns across both hospitality and in the event planning world, in the fact that there's been a shortage of staff coming out of the pandemic, number one. You know, a lot of people did exit the industry for whatever reason, and staffing back up again became a big challenge for everybody. So when you consider that, you've got a planner who's trying to source for business, who's trying to do more with less, and is therefore more short of time. And then you've got the hospitality industry facing the same challenge, and obviously on the flip side, they have the challenge in responding to inquiries and etc. So this has been an ongoing problem. It's easing in some areas, but that's something we've very much seen. What's interesting is we've also seen the consolidation of roles within that space. And what I mean by that is when we look at business travel alongside event planners, a lot of the event planning community, those marketers, those planners, you've got the same point of contact looking after business travel as well as meetings and events. And that's a trend that we've seen across 500 plus organizations that we've surveyed over the past 12 months. So we're seeing that consolidation there. And I think one of the other things that we've seen is a change in booking windows. So what happened when the pandemic kicked off, well, booking windows were extensively long, 365 days because of the lack of confidence in travel and meetings. Then that came back to coming out of the pandemic, and what we saw was lots of small meetings with extremely short booking windows. It was putting pressure on everybody across the industry. That's normalizing more now as we move forward. It's around about, from our system, it's around about 140 days on average across small to very large events. But one of the things associated with that is that both planners and travel managers are looking for very last minute cancellation policies. So when it comes to cancellation, instead of it being 24, 48 hours before, they want that cancellation to be on the day, up until sort of 2 p.m, the ability to cancel without charge. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing as we've moved out of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Manju, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here and ask you whether these trends are tallying with what you're seeing across the PPHE portfolio. Is this echoed?
I think anybody listening to us will say, ditto is exactly the same. The buyers want responses. We have had a big challenge, the pandemic. These were areas where we closed our hotels, and we are obviously seeing a bounce back, and we've come back a lot faster. Certainly in the last 6 months, we've seen pre-pandemic inquiry levels return. It is difficult to motivate the teams because, it's full on. You've got large inquiries, small inquiries, you have them all bundled up sometimes in the same amount of work that needs to get done. So unfortunately, yes, we have to respond to as much as we possibly can. The buyers want responses and they want them quickly. And, we're having to, the buyers are actually having to put a wider net out there, because I think some of the conversations I have with Graham is, when we get an inquiry, who else has the buyer made inquiries with? And I think, the conversion is a very important, metric that we use within our business. And I think nowadays buyers are having to go to 10 or maybe even up to 15 hotels sometimes to get availability, because the industry has been very slow to react at how quickly this business has bounced back. But it is good. We are focusing on what we can. We are seeing the staff levels improve, certainly, and in motivating and keeping that staff engaged is really the challenge now. And I think this is, it's great that we're talking about automation, because some of these simple tasks have to be automated now, because people are just not prepared to do them anymore.
Just an interesting point on something Manju just mentioned there, if I may. One of the trends we've obviously seen as we've got new people coming into the event planning world, the business travel world, that generation are very savvy with using online tools, right? Coupled with the fact that they don't have the resource or the budgets to do lots of site visits and lots of travel themselves. We've seen that natural influx of people utilising our platform to source venues first and foremost. But one of the things we did look at in response to Manju's point is, through the CVent system, how many venues are receiving an inquiry, a single unique inquiry on average. And what we found is there are 9 venues receiving that inquiry. Now, that's slightly more than pre-pandemic. But the interesting part about it, and the reason why 18 months ago we at CVent were talking about this golden age of events and the opportunity the pandemic's going to create for hotels and venues, is that out of those 9 inquiries, 2 of them don't respond. 3 will come back saying we don't have availability, or 3 to 4 will come back and say we don't have availability and turn it down. And the planners are getting maybe 3 responses out of those 9. So when you look at the chance of conversion is very good. The challenge, however, is with this sudden influx of meetings and events coming back, is that venues and hotels are getting an influx of inquiries from all channels, not just CVent, from their website, from other areas. How do you prioritize those leads, go after the right business and the business that you can convert? And we'll talk more about this later, but that's where software comes into play and automation comes into play. But there is an opportunity here to stand out from the crowd and capture a disproportionate market share. It's how do you do that? And automation, software and technology is the key to doing it, in my view.
Manju, can I ask whether there's any differences that you're seeing that maybe an area that we haven't touched about just so far with what Graham was saying around there's less staff but more tech savvy staff. We can see a consolidation of roles. I know you highlighted that in your introduction, actually, that your role is also multiple in that respect. Booking windows have now averaged at around 140 days. Is there anything you would add here, or something that you're seeing that's perhaps different?
I think groups, meetings and events is finding that right balance. There's small inquiries which could be done, very transactional inquiries that could be done with a lot more automation, but it's still quite a complex business, running medium-sized or large-sized events. They're really important for the people who run them, because it's about staff engagement or achieving an objective. There's a lot of conversation that's required, a lot of planning that's required. So for me, I think it's how do we get the right balance with automation and actually satisfying what the customer wants. But I think, what Graham's saying is that, we tend to lump it all together under one big group. It's not. We really need to start now segmenting our business to say, what is a small group meeting or event, and how can we handle that much quicker, much smarter in the way the new modern buyer wants to buy it, versus some of the other bigger, more complex stuff, which we just need to get right and we need a lot more information on, and it requires a lot more dialogue. So I think it's about getting the balance. One size is definitely not going to fit our business. And I think for some of our listeners today as well, especially if you're in the luxury market or in the big hotel market, it's really important, because some, like I said, not just the purpose, but the revenue spend by some of the buyers is a lot.
Antonio, let's bring you in here, and I want to understand what's your forecast on corporate travel demand in 2024, and I'd like to tag on a question here about how are you empowering your teams now to help manage the RFP process.
Thank you, Eloise. Yeah, it's twofold of the same questions. Starting with the trend, As a company, we certainly see an increase in business travel. We've seen in the early stage this year, and we see that continuing. If I look at statistics and reports from major organizations, which are the voice of the industry, like GBTA, they forecast business travel to increase between 11-12% in 2024 over 2023. And I think it's a trend that is in line with what we see as well. I was in the US 2 weeks ago, and talking to the major companies, what's happening now is that people are coming back to the office slowly because, let's face it, up to a few months ago, particularly in some areas of the world, companies were still on 2 days in the office and 3 days smart working. And now they're progressively coming back to 3, maybe 4 days. They will never come back to 5 days in the office. That's guaranteed, unless there are very specific reasons. But the majority of large corporations will not go back to 5 days in the office. And that's also a financial reasons, because most of them, they see it as an opportunity. First of all, they can offer additional benefits to to their staff, which we know right now it's an issue across the industry. Finding the right staff and keeping in the company. And secondly, they can downsize their offices and making some savings on the office space. So certainly that business will not come back to 5 days in the office. Smart working will still remain. However, business travel will increase. I think purchasing managers are now understanding that they need to raise a little the bar of the plafond of business travel, because the rates have increased everywhere. So they need to be flexible in the way they travel. But generally, we certainly see an increase of business travel. And on the meeting side, as opposite of what we see in the offices, there was a huge demand for in-person meetings. Despite all the tools we have available today, there is a strong demand for in-person meetings. That's positive, that's encouraging. We see an increase in between 15 and 20% in demand of group meetings. So the demand is there, it's getting stronger. There is a demand of in-person meetings. We need to capture it. And as we said before, tools are very important. We all facing issues with staff and qualifications. What we've done on the initial stage, which is more on qualifying the demand, because right now, as Graham was saying, there's a lot of new people in the industry that they rely on tools. But what happens is that they can just send an inquiry to 15 hotels without much qualification. So you receive a lot of unqualified requests. So you need to try and work in advance and qualify those requests to be able to spend your time wisely on what's really important. We use a lot LinkedIn Sales Navigator, for example, in terms of identifying the decision makers within the companies to know who is who and how do we get to the final decision maker quicker than we should be doing through the usual channels. In relation to the C-Event tools, which is a lot, we use RFP Visibility Enterprise, which can enable us to centrally monitor all the requests going to all hotels. We use a lot Enterprise Dashboard, which is very important to analyze time responses, conversion, turn down ratio, geo sources. These data are crucial to understand the dynamic of every single inquiry and to enable our team to do a better job in qualifying the demand, spending time on the right demand. We're using RFP Showcase, which is a great tool to analyze all the missed opportunities and receive inquiries from planners that did not initially came to you with an inquiry. So there is a variety of different tools which we use to empower the team to do a smarter job. I mean, the goal today, as we said, is smart responses, relevant responses, timely responses. That's really key to gain a business.
We were talking just before we went live on this webinar about the importance of integration in this respect. I mean, there's so many tools now and technology platforms that we can now utilize. Antonio, would you be able to talk to the power of integration and how that is maybe changing your role in terms of what you are looking for either amongst your teams and empowering your teams to be able to manage that?
Absolutely. I can talk about the headache of integrations if you want to, but I think everybody's living that. I know we, as a company, we're really moving forward in integration of different platforms. We just had, a new RMS systems. We're going to have by the end of the year, a new CRM. All these systems need to talk to each other, and Cvent is a great platform that integrates a lot of different tools. Linked Sales Certificator can be plugged in the CRM and also in Cvent. So I think the idea is that when you have the information in one area, you need to be able to read the information on different platforms. And then from that platform, the ability of using that quality information to do a better job in, responding to the leads. So if the RMS reads, the CRM information and reads other information, can do a better job in elaborating the right rate strategy. And the CRM as well, if they reads, whatever goes in that system, can do a better job in identifying the right actions to be done in order to approach the right customer base. So I think the integration of all these different tools have the ability of, one, identify the best customers for our more relevant customers, and two, to identify right rate strategies and response strategies. Easy to say, it's not easy to do, but certainly that's a secret of the ability of integrating, and also database. It enable our team to have all the information in one place, regardless of where the information comes in from. The big data collections, it's crucial and important for us to be able to respond timely, correctly. But again, as I said, it's easy to say, not easy to implement, but that's the future. The people that will succeed in integrating all the systems quickly are the people who will succeed first.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that, actually, Antonio's hit, the nail on the head. I mean, you've got all these systems, CRSs, PMSs, RMSs, blah, 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 and they have to talk to each other. So what we did in our company is, obviously you have a distribution person who makes sure that everything is plugged in, the fact that everything is flowing between your CRM and your PMS and everything's logged properly. And there's also troubleshooting. We have GDSs, we have multiple channels as well as channel managers. We took the choice to actually introduce a director of distribution for groups, meeting and events as well, because I think we forget that there's multiple platforms. We are beginning to allow meetings to be booked online. We do have pricing within the meetings world, and that goes with a demand calendar. And it's a little bit more complex because you don't have as many meeting rooms as you would have bedrooms, obviously, and you do want to make them available. So, that's one of the new roles that we introduced actually after the pandemic, is we now have a director of distribution for everything that plugs in with our bedrooms, but also we have a director of distribution for groups, meeting and events, because for me, that's a really important part, especially because we run two of our largest conference hotels, one in Europe and one in London. So it's really important for us that we get it right.
As a quick piece of advice to the audience, I can say, whenever you implement a new system, always ask the question if the system is talking to your original systems. Yeah. Always ask the question. If they are not, which could be, you say by when they will foresee the integration with your system, because that's crucial. There's a lot of new system out there, very, very powerful, very useful. If they don't talk to each other, honestly, it's a big headache. So first question to ask: are you talking to my system? Yes or no?
Yeah.
The variety of integrations that can now take place within the sort of modern world, Graham, how is this affecting your role? I'm kind of wanting you to build on Manju's point that they've now introduced a new team member to actually help with on the distribution side. Graham, can you come at it from a slightly different perspective here and talk to me about what opportunities are out there that you're seeing?
Well, I think initially I've got probably the same word as Antonio, headache. It's probably the way to describe it. But no, look, I think one of the common requests for us now is that every conversation talks around integration. How do we integrate our systems, right? And I think it's important because whilst we're obviously a very, very big channel in terms of business from a MICE and transient point of view, going through to the hospitality or events venues space, we're not the only channel, right? There's the website as well. It's got lots of leads coming via the website. There's other smaller providers out there in various locations. So from the customer's point of view, their challenge is how do I coordinate this, number one, and pull this together so that actually when I'm looking at data, it's aggregated data across the space rather than in pockets, because you will get different types of data depending on what you're looking at. we're fortunate that the spread of our business does span from very small domestic business right through to very big international business from immediate quarter to 4 years out. So we have a very good widespread, but we look at that. But every conversation we're having with customers now is, look, how do we integrate? How do we look at this? Because we want to be able to take directional information about how to improve our business right from a internal perspective through to the customer perspective. So we talk about CRM integration a lot. How can we make sure we're pulling that data? How can we look at, Antonio talked about Sales Navigator. We have our own solution, Planner Navigator, that enables you to look back at planners that have sourced you in the past and how do you tackle planners that aren't sourcing to you. So integration is very much key. The challenge really is that you could end up in 100 conversations and 80 of those want a bespoke integration, right? Which of course is just not manageable. So the answer to it is working with a lot of partners with open APIs so we can actually integrate through these channels. And that's something we're seeing a general trend of.
Thanks, Graham. Now, I know we're focused on today's conversation about automation and specifically MICE, meetings and events broadly. And we are now very much in event season for hotels. I know October especially is just frantic with so many events happening within the hotel space. And hotels are simultaneously trying to service demand whilst also looking to capture new business. And so, Manju, I'm coming to you for my next question, please. What challenges does this typically present?
Well, do you focus on your inbox and processing the inquiry, or do you focus on being on the floor, and that is always going to be a challenge, So I think, you have to work smarter. You have to be very familiar with your inbox and what's going on. And what we did at PPHE, we very much separated the sales process from the planning process, because they are quite different roles and there's a lot of different technology. And especially if we want to bring in some kind of automation, I think the salespeople were much more proactive about using automation. So, so for me, handling the inquiry is really important, getting back to the customer, because that's where you're building your blocks and building your relationships. And in our business, it's very much a relationship builder. A lot of our business comes from either the same intermediaries or the same customers. We can have, some of our hotels could have a large level of repeat events as well. So I think it's just really important just to make sure the right people are in the right places. And that's one of the things that we sort of really focused on. I mean, some of the areas that we introduced really just for the sales process was, as Antonio mentioned, just qualifying that demand, looking at the email management of it, qualifying it, a pricing and demand calendar for the sales guys so they could actually respond using proper proposal tools so the customer had everything that they could have. And then also within the, terms and conditions, because that's always another gray area. Can I, can't I? Is that we put in some empowerment levels, but we also put in an escalation level where they could actually, get decisions made a lot quicker, because you are talking on days where you have hundreds of inquiries. So it's not just about processing what's coming in, but also the stuff that you're chasing. And I think the planning role is very different. It's, the customer, how, what, when, who, doing the BEOs, liaising at the hotel level to make sure the chef is in the right place and reception's the right place. So we separated the roles. And I don't like to sound like it's a great big drama. It's all great fun. But I think people just want to know it now, especially this new generation. They want to know what the priority is.
Graham, what challenges are you hearing amongst hoteliers in your conversations with clients now? What's similar? What's different? Could you shed any light here?
Yeah, I think, look, one of the biggest ones is the fact that MICE has bounced back, as I think Manju said at the beginning, and Tony's alluded to as well. MICE has bounced back very, very quickly. All of a sudden, we've got this massive demand. And what I'm commonly hearing is, we're getting 80 RFPs a day from all these different channels, but we've got no solution to prioritize those leads and which ones to go after. So the sales team suddenly becomes, number one, very reactive, right? And that's not productive, because you don't know if you're pitching for the right piece of business, if you're missing out on a golden opportunity somewhere else. It stands to reason it's very hit and miss. So that's one of the key things we're hearing. Whereas actually what we're looking at is we talk to a lot of customers and saying, let's look at the planners that have been sourcing to you as an organization. There may be some very common names in there, right? It could be a big TPP, it could be a big corporate. And we often hear our customers saying, yeah, they've been our customer for 10 years. We get a lot of their business. But going back to the point that actually even within those organizations, the individuals there commonly have changed over the last few years. So it may be somebody brand new that's come in, that's now sourcing to the market, who has no loyalty to your particular brand, no knowledge of your venue. All of a sudden, they're open to being swayed and persuaded by anybody. So you can lose share from these customers. And what we often do is we actually delve into that with our data. And I'll give you a real example from recently. We have one where this particular organization has 17 planners who are sourcing business, and you've worked with them for 10 years, but did you realize you're only getting sourced by 2 of those planners now? Right. So there's 15 of them that are no longer or are not sourcing to your particular brand or your property. So that's really interesting. And I think this is where the opportunity lies, but it does mean that as a sales team on property, you need the ability to be proactive. So to prioritize the leads that are coming in, know what you're going after, look at your data, look at where you're winning, where you're losing, whether it's a type of vertical, whether it's based on ADR, whatever the trends may be, and then go out and source and proactively go after the right business. That's the common trend we're hearing. That coupled with the fact that we've spoken about this trend of planners going online, right? It stands to reason. As the generations get younger, that's how people consume content now. They consume content with visuals and video, right? So if you're advertising online, how is your property or your chain of properties being presented to those potential buyers? Because a lot of the time they're not necessarily going to do a site visit, right? They want to get 3 bids in. How much intel is there really there? And we've seen this massive drive for not just having floor plans online, but having those 3D visualizations, those animated walkthroughs, so that the planner can also go at the point of view of sourcing. You want to make sure you get qualified demand. So the more tech you have to say, this is how many people we can accommodate, this is what the layout would look like, this is how your event would look like in 3D, this coupled with all the rest of the information, all of a sudden the planner has confidence that, yes, this is the right type of venue for my particular event, and they source accordingly. Then you know you're getting very qualified leads. To the point, if you're getting 80 leads a day, you want to make sure as many of those as qualified as possible. So that would be my view.
That's where I think the role of the salesperson is changing, because they are using these tools, and not everybody in the team is going to be qualified to do them. You're not going to have a license for everyone to be able to use them. So that's why for me it's really important to have the salesperson that understands all those levers, and then the planner gets on with dealing with the customer and what they need once it's converted.
Antonio, how are you maximising opportunities for conversion? I'd like to bring you in here and just a simple question. What's happening with you? How are you taking advantage of those leads and really driving that revenue and sales?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to share all the secrets. No, joking apart. Jokes apart. That's all we're here for, to share experiences. Certainly, I mean, we discussed about different areas of how you win the business, and there has always been the rate sensitivity is important. Manju was talking about terms and conditions are very important today, cancellation policies, lots of different aspects. To me, the 2 key words today in convert to the business are timely and relevancy. We have statistics internally, but also through events that if you are the first one to respond, you have more chances to win the business. 80% of the business is won by the company who answers first. There's no time to go on second or third negotiations or inquiries. People need to get the response on time. So that's really crucial. How do we do that? And we're going to talk about it. And secondly, relevancy. Today we have a lot of new people in the business, and sometimes what the answer is, it's very basic on very specific inquiries. They just send a generic response on all the services available. If you're a planner, you don't want to get 3 pages of potential opportunities when you ask 3 or 4 specific questions. So the answer needs to be very relevant, very specific to the question the planner asks. If I want that piece of business with these 3 or 4 characteristics, answer to that. Don't give me an answer with all the possible options. I don't need that. I don't have the time to go through all them. So timely relevancy is very important. What we did, we implemented through events, response automation. which helps you to respond to small, simple inquiries in a very, very, simple manner. It's pre-formatted response so that people can see immediately some sort of, initial response to the inquiries, and to see that there is activities going on their request. Also, smart custom proposals. It makes the proposal a little more appealing, a little more relevant. You need also to capture people's attention. Graham was mentioning it today. Spam attention is very limited. So you need to capture the interest is very, very, at the very beginning. So through images, through something a little more appealing, a little more relevant to your requires. We use C-event diagramming to enable also customers to see the layout of their own meetings and do that something themselves, play with that, see different opportunities, different characteristics. I think the more you provide with customers with specific information to make their, educated decisions, the more chances you have to win the business. And I think being timely, being relevant is really key today. Then you have tools that helps you to be timely, to be relevant, but that needs to be your driving force. Try to do it on time and do it in the most relevant way. That would be my key things today.
And I'm sure Antonio did exactly what we did. You have to look at each hotel on its own merits. Some systems and processes work in some, and you don't actually need it in others. So the larger, more complicated hotels with sort of large and small, medium-sized space, they need a lot of that stuff because the buyer needs to be able to see that. But a lot of the small individual hotels with the small meeting rooms, those are the ones where we're looking for online solutions, some automation, and how we can actually move those along a lot faster, because the buyer doesn't need all the details on that. They just want a quick, simple solution.
Graham, could you provide some practical steps on what hoteliers can actually implement now? They can walk away from this webinar right now for them to start benefiting from automation in MICE sales.
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult question, but I'll tell you my view on it. And Antonio's mentioned a whole bunch of solutions there that people can implement immediately, right? But I think the key to it, and I had this conversation at an event last week, the key to it is understanding everything that's available in relation to what you have on property or the chain in terms of your systems you're running and how that corresponds to technical solutions out there. My advice is that we are obviously one of the major partners, but to sit down with people like ourselves to have that discovery session where we will sit with, chains or individual properties for sometimes, a good 4 or 5 hours to do this whole discovery, to understand the exact structure and workflow of the systems there, how can they be integrated in line with our solutions and what can be done. It's very much, I say on our sales side to our sales teams, is very much about being a consultant, number one, and a trusted advisor, number two, because it should be a bespoke solution that works for your property or your chain. Those solutions exist. The things that Antonio has mentioned, whether it's floor planning, whether it's interactive, whether it's 3D visualizations, whether it's our smart custom proposals, which make your proposal stand out, whether it's your planner navigator delving into more proactive sales, those solutions all exist, right? Everything is there. But there's a whole bunch of things behind that. Somebody touched upon RFP enterprise solutions, having that chain level view on what's going on at property level. There's things called routing rules where you can ensure that if a lead comes into your property, it's automatically routed to the right person to respond to, so you're not delaying from a time perspective. But everything should come back, in my view, to what the customer need is. And we spoke about RFPs are generally awarded to one of those first 3 responders. In fact, it's 73% on our channel will go to the first 3 responders. But think about why. If you look at a corporation who is sourcing business, 9 times out of 10, that planner needs 3 bids in order to go to procurement to get that signed off. So once they have those 3 bids, that's it. That's all they need. They move on. They get that signed off. They award the business. So it automatically goes back to what the planner needs are. Planners need fast responses. They need more information at the front end for sourcing, which helps you because it qualifies the lead better, right? And then they need that ability to manage that event in collaboration. So we are doing a lot more with tools like Passkey, which is our room block management tool, with the event diagramming solutions, which is after you've awarded the event, how do you then keep that collaboration in real time with the planner in order to execute and deliver it. And then beyond that is looking at the data and analytics that come out of that whole process. So from the point of sourcing, right? So looking at who's sourcing, when they're sourcing, why they're sourcing, how much you're awarding, how much you're not awarding, through to the management, and then through to those response metrics and those performance metrics at the end. Because if you tie all this together, all of a sudden you've got a very refined sales operation effectively, which allows you to drive your business far more efficiently. That's the key. But I would suggest using us because, you know, I always say it, we sit on an absolute goldmine of data. You know, I spoke about the sourcing volumes we have, the number of planners we work with, number of hotels we work with. We have so much data here. Use us for it. We want to partner with you. Do use us for it.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to spend the last 10 minutes or so of this webinar talking about AI. I mean, this conversation is about automation. I'm almost surprised that it's taken this long for us to actually bring up artificial intelligence. But I would like to hear everybody's thoughts on the outlook of artificial intelligence on hotel operations. And I'm going to use this opportunity as well to flag to our audience members that if you do have any questions, please submit these using the Q&A function, and I'll keep my beady eyes on the chat there. But going back to AI, Antonio, I would very much like to kick off with yourself. What is your outlook? Where do you see the greatest potential or the greatest challenges with deploying AI?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. I think AI is here to stay, right? That's no doubt. You know, whether we like it or not, it's a new way of looking at different things. I think in hotels, what we need to look at AI, you know, being a people business, you don't want to remove the people interaction, but you want to try and use AI for the non-value add tasks. You know, the task where people don't add any value doing it personally, but a machine or, you know, whatever can do for you. So the interactions where there is no need of a human being that AI can support. AI is also important for maximizing the potential of revenue management systems, you know, that can collect a variety of new data, which not just, you know, demand or pricing. It goes, you know, I've seen systems that collect also data on you know, flights, you know, capacity and, you know, incoming flights, weather forecasts. They integrate a lot of new things that are all together, you know, analyzed by somebody human mind could not do, right? So they analyze a number of data all together, and they come up with some trends. Of course, so one data is not a trend, but if it's lots of data consequently all together, then you can see some trends and then some analytics, and you can see that when something happens, that's a concentrate of what's happening. So, and when you see that consequence happening frequently on an activity, then it's a trend. And you can see, okay, whenever there is this kind of activity going on, I know these are the consequences. This is how I can react. This is pretty much on revenue management. In terms of operations in hotels, I think also we can use AI for, you know, cost savings, you know, energy savings. There's a new technology coming in that can, you know, analyze your costs, your consumptions, and give you better, you know, outcomes on where you can improve, what things you can do better. I think AI, it needs to be used wisely. You know, an extensive use of AI can be overwhelming. I mean, again, as I said, we are a people business. So, you know, we not transform that kind of a human interaction, but we can certainly have areas of support with analytics that human mind cannot process, at least not at the same speed. So I think that's you know, how we can use the product. Then again, there's lots of systems, a lot of variables that we can use that for.
I've asked this question a lot actually, and revenue management is an area that keeps cropping up in terms of the real sort of hardcore use of AI at this moment in time within hotel operations. There are other property prop tech suppliers out there who are saying that you know, don't the hype and the reality at the moment so far around AI is very big. And over time, that gap is going to start to narrow, and we'll start to figure out the real kind of use cases of how we can really use it to our advantage. But it seems like we're still in an age of experimentation and understanding how we can best use it. Manju, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you just talked about revenue management. The thing is, the RMS systems have been around for some time, so they've been able to integrate with our systems, or the systems that we use are able to give to us. I mean, there's no human mind that can actually look at all of the review scores of your competitors and the daily pricing that they have for all of their room types, and look at their forward demand and chunk out a rate, right? So the fact that we've got an RMS systems that can do that, humanly, it's not possible. As Antonio said, there's a lot of stuff that we think we can do, but we can't. We can do it a lot better if we let the computer get on with it. But, the fact is we do have a lot of legacy systems in our business. And, we use Opera Sales and Catering. We don't use Delphi for our meetings and events. And you ask a nice modern AI robotics company to link in to them, it's just not possible. There's interfaces, and I think it's a lot of learning for us as well, trying to really map out how we use robotics, how we use AI, and where we use it. And as Antonio said, we are using it in some of our areas, and certainly in customer service areas where it's a simple question, what time do I check in? Certainly in financial reporting, certainly in revenue management. And then some of the back-end systems, remember we've got receptions and back-end offices where, robotics is used quite significantly. But no, we're a people person, people person-y business, touchy-feely. We need to know what is going on. We need to be able to deliver it. And, you've got to remember is that we're now talking about handling inquiries where, yes, a lot of the automation can happen, but we've also got proactive salespeople who are attending trade shows and talking to those buyers and talking to those planners. So for me, that's where that human relationship comes in. And then, the responding to is just the byproduct of us actually investing in the front end, right? And being in front of customers at trade shows and sales, all the sales activity we invest in.
And Graham, what are your thoughts on the topic?
Well, we're already developing a number of solutions that are based on AI. But look, it talks to, I think you mentioned the reality and the hype around it, but we're looking at what the immediate needs. And I think we've uncovered what the immediate needs are now. We know that face-to-face meetings aren't going to go away. There's huge appetite for them. We've got these challenges behind the scenes in how much time can we spend developing those relationships, working face-to-face with people versus doing those administrative tasks behind the scenes and responding to RFPs and things that are slowing us down and losing us business, right? So a number of things we're developing is our proposal writing assistant, which is one, which is the ability to, it's kind of like a response automation, but the ability to pre-answer lots of sort of almost generic questions across the proposal in a tone that's in line with the planner, that's exactly how you want to present it from the hotel's perspective. We've got the RFP agenda builder coming up, right? So if you take an agenda, you build it into an agenda template that goes into your proposal. We've got the floor planning with AI. So taking that inquiry, the leads, looking at the breakout rooms, the main plenary, automatically generating those templates, uploading that into your smart custom proposal straight away. All of these different things all lead to cutting down that time to respond, so that you've got more time to liaise with the planners and work with them, and your sales team can be far more focused in doing what they do best, which is converting business. So these things are already happening. But I think beyond that, if you start looking into the way that AI is going to be able to look at data, look at analytics, and generate directional outcomes for your business, that's where the real power is going to be. So I think it's very exciting. I think a lot of people are worried about it as well in terms of what it's going to do. But I think actually there's going to be a number of avenues that are open from this. And I think it's going to serve us very well within an industry, frankly, that has kind of been fairly slow to adopt technology because of all these legacy systems that everybody operates on now. They don't talk to each other. This is going to open up a wealth of opportunity for people.
I can see the research aspect of AI being really, really helpful. I know that there are to bring it to my industry, journalism, there are journalists out there who are using AI to analyze big financial documents and to pull out the key data. And I can imagine that this could also be beneficial within the sector that we're talking about now, the MICE sector. I can see great potential there, and I've if you broaden AI to look at things like the metaverse, meetings and events it's a perfect marriage. I think we've talked about some of the tools there already with space diagramming and being able to sort of understand the look and feel before even actually setting foot on the actual property. Yeah, also fantastic potential there. Graham, I'd like to give you the final word here before we close off our conversation. If you could summarize how automation can benefit the hotel industry in managing MICE business, what would that be?
Oh, thanks, Eloise. That's really good to land that on me. So look, I think automation is coming at the right time. If we can automate, and I've said it already a couple of times on today's meeting, but I think the ability to streamline operations, and I think every one of us, whether it's on our side of the industry, whether it's the hotel side, whether it's the planner side, all have the same goal, which is now doing more with less, frankly, working smarter and being more efficient. That's where automation comes into play, right? Because we all have to do that. We've all got goals to hit. We've all got challenges we face. If you look at the challenge on the hospitality industry of attracting talent now into the industry, right? One of the biggest challenges is it's a hard work. It's great. It's lots of relations with it, but it's hard work. It's a lot of investment. People shied away from it. If we can automate processes and bring that enjoyment back in, which is dealing with people face to face, that face-to-face engagement, not being burdened by lots of administrative duties, automation can cut through a lot of the noise and help in that regard. And I think that's absolutely key, because that has an automatic effect on profitability, response times, conversion of business, the profitability side, etc. So I think that's where it's so key. The challenge, which I think Antonio's mentioned and Manju's mentioned, is that we're operating all these legacy systems. How do we look at it? It comes back to the point I made earlier. Do that deep dive and understand what is possible within your chain or your property. We're very happy to support in that regard. In fact, we want to. It's what we do. We can help give our advice in lots of areas across meetings, events, and business travel, and how to streamline your systems, what you'd need to implement in order to do it. There are solutions within there, whether it's small pockets or whether it's majorly transformational solutions. It varies depending on what you have, but use partners like us, converse with us, and let's come up with it together.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Manju. Thanks, Antonio. We've got some closing slides to run through before we bop off, but we are going to keep this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes at the end for any of our audience members to follow up on any of the links that we have popped into the chat today. I know Cvent has covered quite a few reports actually all around automation. For example, the Essential Guide to Automation Technology. You can scan this QR code and download that if you would like to learn further information, and we'll also pop the links to these guides in the follow-up email, which will include the webinar replay too. So all the assets will be there for you to look through at your own leisure. On the next slide, Cvent is hosting their Connect Europe event on the 7th and 9th of November in London. Graham, for those that are listening who are maybe unfamiliar with the event and would like to learn more, what can they expect?
Okay, Cvent Connect's been a growing event for a number of years. We've just hosted our version in Las Vegas very recently, where we had close to 4,000 people for that particular event. The one in London is moving into central London for the first time from the Intercontinental O2. It's moved into central London. Registration's stronger than it's ever been at this point pre-event, which is very, very encouraging. It's kind of a 3 or 4 to 1 planner to hotelier ratio. So a lot of networking opportunity, a lot of prospecting opportunity. But I think the major thing is to come and learn about where the industry's going, learn about the solutions that are available out there that can improve your sales velocity, improve your operational efficiency, lots of topics on that. And you won't just be hearing from Cvent. I mean, we've got some incredible key speakers, both from the planner community, so big corporations, very high-level execs of big corporations speaking. We've got high-level execs of third parties speaking. And of course, we've got other tech partners speaking as well. So there's some fantastic speakers. It's not just Cvent, there's a lot of industry speakers there. The ability to interact, the ability to see things, in person firsthand. It's a golden opportunity. We're expecting probably around about 1,700 people in total to register for the events in London. It's the kind of golden opportunity. So if you can, look it up, look at the agenda, come and join us. We kind of promise it's going to be valuable time well spent.
Thank you, Graham. And readers of Boutique Hotel News and webinar attendees of today can get a 10% discount on their tickets using the code BHN10. So the registration details for Cvent Connect Europe will be popped into the chat should anybody wish to learn further information. Just a quick plug on my side for the next webinar in our series, Creating the Ultimate Revenue Generating Guest Journey, will be taking place on Monday, the 2nd of October at 2 p.m. BST. Please do sign up. It will be great to see you all there if you're interested in learning more. And to work with us, be it on our webinars or any of our digital events and in person, please do get in touch with my colleagues Jordan and Piers, whose details are on your screen now. All that's left for me today is to say thank you. Thank you to Manju, thank you to Graham, thank you Antonio for sharing your insights, and thank you to Cvent for giving us the opportunity to host this webinar with them. If I don't see you before Monday the 2nd of October, enjoy your week. Otherwise, we will see you back very soon. Thanks and take care all, and goodbye.